Hey everyone, today I'd like to talk about how to remove static assets from Git repo using BFG. It's a very handy tool that can help you remove any unwanted files. Those are typically like movie files, sound files, maybe large binary image files, and or any credential sensitive credential files. So before we get started on how, let's talk about why. So static assets are best served over CDN. So like any image files, movie files in particular, if you serve over the CDN, it can gain the benefit of the streaming instead of having to download all the movie file before it can stream it like on the hero image or something like that. Also, repo size inflates even if you delete binary files. So like you commit 100 megabyte of a movie file, and later you decide you don't want that, and then you commit a deletion of a file, but Git actually keeps track of it. So you think it's gonna bring the size down by 100 megabyte, but it actually doesn't. And that's gonna keep inflating over time, and that's gonna start to affect the backup size and CI performance and deployment speed because every time you inflate the repo size, and imagine you keep inflating it to 500 megabyte or even 1 gigabyte of a size. Every time you push a code, it takes a gigabyte worth of download for anybody else trying to check in your code or CI every time you're sending that code. So it's really important for you to keep it clean and remove any binary files that shouldn't be really checked in. So let's talk about the step. So first, you want to download the BFG. This is a very handy tool for you to use. You can actually use more like a low-level Git filter branch, but this actually makes it easy. It's kind of like a wrapper API. Makes it really easy for us to use, and apparently it's also faster alternative. So go ahead and download that script to your local downloads folder. You can optionally create a PFG alias if you want to use this often, but usually I just need it for one-time use. I'm just going to keep it. And also make sure to clone this, or actually fork this repository for your practice, so you can do it without actually affecting the real site, and kind of get used to it and be comfortable before you run this operation, because this is actually pretty destructive. It actually rewrites the history in the end. So first of all, I'm going to bring up this git bfg. First, check your repo size and make a note of it. So you can do maybe a command line tool to get the size of the repo, or yeah, total 9936 kilobytes, or the 9.9 megabytes. And then first step, commit removal of static assets you no longer want. Notice the repo size still accounts for previously committed binary file. Okay, so I'm going to actually delete hero loop, which we don't want. Delete. And then in the clone, I should be getting, yep, remove hero loop. And if you're a command line user, you can just run a command. I'm just going to use a source tree because it's a little bit visually obvious what you're doing. So going back to the terminal, I'm going to do ls. Now the total went down to 32 visibly, but I'm going to actually go back to the repo list, and I actually like to run get info. So notice there's still 4.6 megabyte of file, and it's actually half of the 9.9 megabyte because I actually removed the binary file, but it actually has the size of this hero, which was, if I actually bring it back quickly, so 5.1 megabyte. And then if we check the file size again, 9.7 megabyte. And then I'm going to delete this. And there's nothing else besides the movie file that's actually inflating the repo. You can see the other files are just 1 kilobyte. And I'm going to delete it again. Remove the movie. Yep, and then ideally it should be just a couple kilobyte, but it still retains 4.6 megabyte because there's a file in the history. So next step, open your terminal, run BFG to remove specific files with following example command. Okay, so I'm gonna actually copy this guy here. I'm kind of lazy, so I don't want to set up a alias yet. I'm just gonna copy the jar file directly into the repo. Make sure you don't check in that jar file. But java jar bfg jar delete file some text file dot extension. So that's an example. So in this case, we actually know the file was called hero loop.mp4. So I'm going to run this. Enable to access jar. Okay, so I'm going to actually double check. Oh yes, because this one has a version as part of the name. Going back, I'm going to run it again. It did something here. Okay, let's see what happened. Found 3 objects to protect. Found full commit, blah, 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 cleaning. And then it should find the file, hero loop.mp4, 4.8 megabyte. In total, 5 object IDs were changed. It kind of gives you all the log and see what happened. Check in Git history to see if the file has been removed in previous commits. The repo size has not changed just yet because Git keeps your backup just in case. So I'm going to look at this. Okay, so this is fine. It actually doesn't show in the history here. But it doesn't show that it removed it in this commit. But if you go back here, add hero video, there used to be a file checked in at this point, but it actually went back in the history and changed it so as if I actually never checked in the MP4 file. So commit says add hero video, and it actually added video at this commit, but it's gone. So I'm gonna also check I'm gonna delete this guy because it's done. Now I'm gonna still check the folder size. It still says 4.6 megabyte even though you deleted in the history. So Git actually keeps your backup just in case, and it's called you can access the history by git reflog. You can actually go back in time in the history. This is actually very useful in case you made a huge mistake and commit something and then, oh, you need to go back. Well, Git kind of provides that safeguarding. So I'm going to run this command, which expires this full safe backup. That would ultimately clean everything up. Now check your repo size. It should have reduced repo size by the size of the files removed. The Git history should change at this point, which you want to force push up to the origin. Okay. Okay, you can already see that Git BFG used to be some megabytes, but now it's 35 kilobyte instead. And then if you look at the source tree history, actually this should reflect the huge change in the history actually. Yep, took a little bit while to change. So this is the local, and here you see the origin. So you can see that local has diverged from the master origin. So master origin still has a hero loop mp4 file, but we changed the history, so it's as if we actually changed nothing. And even in the commit of remove the movie, we actually don't even see the file, even though we actually committed the removing a file. So in the end, you just force push, and be careful whenever you force push, make sure it's a test repo. In the end, history has changed, nothing is committed here. Index.html is the only thing committed here, same here. And in the end, the repo size is actually reduced it down. So there's a note. The repo size in remote server might still be large until remote reflog expires over time. So Git is, decentralized place. So the origin server, wherever you are hosting it, whether it's GitHub or Bitbucket, they probably have their own reflog going. So that needs to expire before you see file size drop down. But that's more like a private history that nobody else has access to. So at this point, it's actually safe if you're checking in the sensitive information. But if you're still worried about file size repo still being large, you might need to actually, if possible, maybe do something like recreate the repo and then push it over and rename the repo so that old one is like a deprecated. That's if you really want to make it small, and if you want to go from like 100 megabyte repo to down to like a couple of megabytes. So that's some note. Until admin can run the expire command, maybe a different repo hosting provider can give you the access. But yeah, that's it. This is really useful, and you can actually read documentation for more complex cases if you want to do something like strip logs bigger than 100 megabyte. But if you know exactly which files, folders you want to remove, then you can just directly specify which files you want to delete. So yeah, hope this is helpful for you guys. So in summary, go ahead and remove binary files, especially movie files you really don't want to check in. A lot of image files you probably don't want to check in, maybe except for logo and maybe some sprite assets that go with the website that you cannot really separate from the website. That's good candidate for keeping into the repo, but try to keep the repo size small and try to serve all the images over CDN. Thank you guys. Until next Git tutorial.